we are running behind the schedule, so let's just quickly start. So we just saw a very interesting case study about how AI-generated deepfake content is playing a role in terms of democracies, in terms of elections, and from the practitioner's perspective, now we are going to somewhat a scholarly perspective and the diplomatic perspective. So let us start with Guillermo. And the fact is, that what we saw in the case of Burkina Faso, and this year being the year of elections, almost 64 countries are having elections, including the European Union. This kind of content is playing a role in terms of elections and in terms of interference. What is your perspective? Where are we heading in terms of AI, disinformation, and its malicious use by rogue actors?
Thank you. Thank you very much. As a matter of fact, I came into AI from the study of disinformation. As I said before, I represent an outfit, the Spanish onthe, recently created only 3 years ago, which deals with the strategic projection and protection of Spanish language. And as I was getting ready to take up that new position in my previous post, I came across a cable from an embassy in Washington that said Democratic senator of Hispanic origin had raised the issue at the US Senate that filters and controls that took care of disinformation and foreign interference and information manipulation were just not sufficient. The resources devoted to Spanish and to protecting the integrity of Spanish language information were just not the same as the resources that safeguarded the integrity of information in English. So that's where our interest started, and then we started coming across examples such as the one that we just saw in this case. And I'm familiar with this case. I was contacted by a British newspaper asking for help in doing just what we just saw. The whole thing, obviously, even without the problem in lip sync, was not very believable. The fact that somebody in an office somewhere would think that the people we saw could reliably and realistically be considered African Americans was ludicrous. But then again, this was never intended as a believable piece of disinformation. This was a foreign actor trying out new products, and they worked. Actually, in the departments putting out this kind of dribble, they have to make an extra effort to make it look amateurish, to make it look like we saw. Otherwise, it looks too much like legitimate legacy media. And with that comes a measure of mistrust. And it just so happens that content like the content we saw is taking people out in the streets. I was posted in South America where I could see what foreign disinformation campaigns did in the context of COVID, and how it's driving climate change negationism, vaccination negationism, and so on and so forth. People are being recruited in South America to fight in wars being fought in European soil. So that's a worrying development. And I circle back to what I started upon and what the president of the Foundation said, the Spanish Prime Minister said, and a lot of people in the previous panel said. Our interest in working together with India is not only that India is tech savvy beyond what we can do, but most importantly, we owe the latest Spanish triumph in the Euro World Cup to India and Varun more specifically. So thank you very much for that. To make sure that you are in Spain when the next World Cup comes around. But other than that, we share values. India is the largest democracy in the world. and that's not nothing. We share values. We share the belief that there must be an ethical, by design approach to AI, a human-centric approach to AI. No more black boxes. We need to know what happens inside the apps and the LLMs and all of the solutions and products that we love to use and we love to fear in equal measure. And again, Spain's trying to find an alternative, a model for AI development that's neither of the options that are on the table currently. It seems to us in Europe that countries are being given a binary alternative when they think of developing their AI systems, and we just don't think we have to accept that. We don't have to take that sitting down. We are looking at our European partners to have that kind of approach and have our values reflected in the AI solutions that we have. There's something central to what we just saw, and it ties in with what I was saying. There's, I would say, an epistemic problem, a metaphysical problem, let's say, that the facts are no longer facts, they're opinions, truth is no longer a thing. And that's why AI, manipulation done with AI has to look raw and crude and sort of amateurish, because now legacy media and politicians come with luggage. They're not trusted. And the fact is that some of these foreign agents have successfully made global society go back on the notion of truth. We need India, we need democratic partners, we need people who share our values, who think there is such a thing as the truth, as we do and as you do. And it's not, we're not going to fight disinformation and what AI and generative AI can do with disinformation. We're not going to fight it merely providing the accurate facts, merely showing this game, this is a voice actor, and this image came up in a Sears catalog in '94. I don't know. Things like that happen. People find themselves, listen to their voices being used in satellite navigation and so on and so forth. That no longer matters to people. If you engage in a principled discussion and provide facts, oftentimes what you get back is, well, that's your opinion. And I'm sorry, there's an area in which there are opinions, there's another area, and we believe that, you believe that, in which there are facts, and facts are not subject to opinions. And I think that's what we need to do. That's what Spain's trying to do within Europe. That's also what Spain's trying to do in the Spanish-speaking world, and especially in the Ibero-American region, where we're pushing for a common model for AI development, and something that's very that will resonate in India as well. Spain places a very high value on having multilingual AI systems and generative AI. We have several co-official languages, and a global language which comes, and maybe there will be time to go into that later, having, as you do with Hindi and English, sharing global languages with diasporas and with people whose second and third language are English or Hindi, comes with its own set of threats and problems within the realm of filming and disinformation. That's something that I think we should be able to work on.
So Guillermo, you're talking about also hinting towards the global governance, and something which I'll come back to you in terms of the fact that it was under the Spanish presidency of the EU Council that the AI Act was passed. So there is that alignment which is also happening in terms of the Spanish national priorities on AI, but also looking at the EU regulations. And I'll come back to you on that.
Thank you.
But let me turn to my colleague, Dr. Anulekha. Anulekha, Prime Minister in his address also talked about the fact about the foreign collaborations. He talked about AI being ethical. He talked about also the global governance, right? And New Delhi and India have taken a lead when it comes to responsible AI. We have seen that in the context of the G20 New Delhi Leaders Declaration. Can you just briefly give an overview in terms of what India is doing in terms of global governance of AI?
Thank you so much for that question. And I think, from what I heard during the interventions today, there were two key takeaways of AI being the fulcrum of India-Spain relationships, and also where do we find the common ground. And I think when it comes to AI, we do start from common foundations. I mean, both countries have a clear vision of what its AI features would look like, and that's reflected in our national strategies. So, and that future is safe, it's equitable, it's inclusive. While there is a focus on kind of increasing, efficiency and innovation, there's also a simultaneous focus on responsibility, governance, accountability, and so on. So while we are kind of looking at sectors of priority, sectoral transformations, building ecosystem capabilities like computing, data, skilling, talent, human development, R&D, etc., there's also this strong focus on making sure that that development and innovation happens with the correct guardrails in place. And I think from that standpoint, from that point of consensus, we have the strong foundations from where to kind of build and identify and kind of mutually synergize our strengths. And then, so there's a recognition of where we are at, where we need to be, and how do we get there. So the next step essentially is how do we kind of get our mutual strengths together. And I believe, and I defer to my Spanish colleagues here, Spain has many firsts in the EU. I mean, it established the first AI regulator in anticipation of the AI Act, right? And also the first regulatory sandbox in AI, so which I think provides lessons in institution building. It provides lessons in how we co-develop responsive regulation. And on the Indian side, we have the highest AI skills penetration in the world, and also a very lively and vibrant AI startup ecosystem in the country. So a kind of readily available pool of digital products and services to effect or to implement the many strategic priorities that find place in our mutual national strategies. And in recognition of these mutual strengths, what we perhaps need to do going forward is identify areas of joint action. Two of them can be industry academia collaborations, for example, strengthening those as a part of bilateral relationships, because both countries have vibrant academic research, particularly in AI. And to kind of synergize those kind of knowledge and sharing of knowledge and technical expertise also in some sense helps reduce the time to market in terms of some of these AI products and services, kind of again helps implement and realize some of the vision outlined in strategy documents. And also second and more importantly, I feel we need to think about how we encourage and foster investments in AI infrastructure. So currently a lot of private investment kind of goes into AI application, like downstream application areas. So, but if we were, as two countries, to build AI competencies, we need to think about how we foster and encourage investment in hardware and computing, in R&D essentially, to kind of build, and also in foundational models that kind of speak to our linguistic and our country and regional realities. So I think, to sum up, when we look at this relationship kind of going forward, we start from common foundations, we look at complementarities to kind of build and strengthen this relationship and kind of identify areas of where we can take joint leadership on some of these issues.
Thank you. Guillermo, we're talking about the AI Act, the EU AI Act, and the fact is, that looking from outside, it looks like a certain tension between the fact that you want to have a certain continental regulation, but at the same time also develop the national competency in AI. And we know for a fact that there is a lot of competition which happens in terms of attracting the investments from the VC community in the AI development. And we know that the Barcelona, for instance, is now the third largest attractive destination in terms of the AI investment. From your experience, how do you see, in a sense, alignment happening between this national priority and the continental priority in terms of bringing regulation which applies to all the countries of the European Union?
Oh, that's very interesting. It's we're trying to have an approach that reflects the multiplicity of views and of principles. And I can say that even within Spain, actually, even within the Ministry for Culture, there were divisions. People were reading the Digital Services Act in different ways within the Ministry of Culture, and that impacts the availability of linguistic data that goes to feed LLMs. And so it's been complicated, and it remains complicated because the Digital Services Act is fairly new, and the AA Act is even newer. You mentioned before that this was passed during the Spanish rotating presidency of the EU Council, which happened only last year. And so it's fairly new, and its implementation is still being debated, which leaves some room for misunderstanding and divergent understandings. But I think we need to look at this as a temporary situation. And I think I've been thinking about this, and it'd be interesting to hear from you if you agree. It seems to me that we are facing sort of aggression law type of situation in which that currency just takes the place of the good currency. In the case of AI regulation and tech regulation, I think the EU standard, being the most stringent, is being adopted as the standard globally, because, as the doctor mentioned, it's the nature of the businesses in the tech, and especially in the AI ecosystem. It is their nature to be global and to be present in India and Spain and other countries in America, South America, Africa, so on and so forth. So if you are a major company based in, let's say, in the United States, and you are going to be present in a multitude of markets with different regulations, it just makes sense to adapt to the most demanding set of regulations. So de facto, the EU regulations becoming the global, at least inspiration for global regulation in this. And you mentioned regulatory sandboxes. This is being discussed in the Americas as well. There's a lot of interest from the Dominican Republic to Belize to Uruguay in regulatory sandboxes, which are, I don't know if everyone in the audience is familiar with this concept, with regulatory sandboxes. The tech sector, the private sector and the public sector sort of work hand in hand in new technologies. So in areas where there's no regulations because the tech is so emergent, so new, the technological developments and the legal regulation is being developed concurrently at the same time. So the regulators are saying, well, we need to fine-tune this, and people in tech are saying, well, we did not think of this aspect, and we need to cover our areas. And so this is being done sort of simultaneously, and this is fairly novel. We're getting a lot of interest in the Americas, wanting to learn from the European example, and that comes with complications. oftentimes these are countries that do not have national data protection laws, and they want to jump into regulatory sandboxes, which are several steps ahead in that road, and they are thinking of skipping that part of the road. They're thinking, well, that's not where we are anymore. Maybe we needed to do this. We would have needed to do this 3 years ago, but this is no longer where the tech is at, and we need to be looking into regulatory sandboxes. Spain and Europe definitely have a role to play there, and the legislation, I think, has a calling to become the global standard, the global de facto standard for regulation. So there's a lot of interest, if I think, in looking at EU law and developing things together, which is what we're looking at here, in impactful and meaningful ways. I think we need to find a plan of action and land and just discuss things that we can do together. I think the areas that you proposed are excellent starting points.
Thank you. If I can turn to Imma and Varun. Imma, what we discussed in terms of the regulatory sandboxes and the public-private partnership, I think from your perspective, from the startup perspective, what do you think are some of the key challenges that the startups or the private sector encounters when it comes to the public-private partnership? Because I always believe that in the public-private partnership, the P of public is capital and the P of private is small caps, right? So that's always a challenge in terms of collaboration. But keen to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'll just take a minute because I'd rather then we can go in the Q&A into more depth, and I'm no expert. But I think in Spain what we can really boast of is having a pretty robust system that allows public system that allows for private companies, for private sector, to thrive, to get grants, to get soft credit, to get, there's really a lot of tools that are, financing, as it was mentioned before, is a key part of being able to do anything. And from that side, in Spain, is everything works. And then we have a government that is an administration that is very much interested in developing companies that are innovative. We are very much into that. We might not be the most known ones, and we might not be the best ones yet, but we are really, as the ambassador mentioned before, we are really making big strides in very little time. And we really want to grow. The sandboxes are great because they are a very useful tool, very useful because the way to not have, everyone in Spain at least has a perception that artificial intelligence is almost evil. It's like coming from a horror movie, going to take us all and govern us and then take the world by storm. But artificial intelligence is not as bad. It's not bad at all. It's agnostic. It's technology. It's people who are bad. It's us. Our enemy is the same. It's us. A knife can operate someone or kill someone, and we all can have access to a lighter, and we're burning down buildings. But the moment where there's more risk that a technology or something is misused or is used for bad is when it's not regulated, because that's when bad actors are always the first and the pioneers to enter outlaw territory. So I think that having the possibility, having a legal framework, and that's the first thing that we as private sector think and need to have. Otherwise, our companies which use the technology for good are helpless, because in the case of this kind of technology, these emerging technologies we're talking about, we're not going to talk about blockchain because that would be like the devil would come here in the middle of the room. But the thing is that we need that, and we need that for that to be regulated. Otherwise, there's no way we grow. And also, we also need, and that's something that I think we can develop together, and that's something that we will, maybe you can talk about it, but the formation part, the education part, that because we also have another idea or project, but or you only no. So then we'll talk about it.
So let me then turn for the final question to Anulekha. You know, it's always a difficult balancing act when it comes to regulation and innovation, right? On one hand, you do want to regulate the use of AI because of all the misuses and abuses which might happen, but at the same time, you don't want to stifle the innovation. And the world over, regulators are trying to juggle these things together. What do you think is India's experience when it comes to that, and what it means for the India-Spain relations as such?
I think India is kind of still exploring the landscape of AI. We don't have a AI regulation per se. We have tried to do it through intermediary guidelines in this year, in fact, early part of this year. What I think, as we go forward, we perhaps need to think, but also there's reflection about the institutions that need to be in place if we look at the expert group report on AI. So what kind of institutional and governance frameworks need to be in place to ensure data is accessible, to foster the innovation ecosystem in the country, to ensure kind of the institutional framework within which AI, different aspects can be regulated, or even industrial policy to kind of establish chip making in the country. So there are different components that are coming together from different parts of the government. But I think when we go forward and look at AI regulation as a whole, as we are talking about in this context, we need to kind of deliberate whether we want to go the EU way, which is like a horizontal cross-sectoral approach, a risk-based approach, or do we kind of look at it sectorally? Or do we, as in the paper we co-wrote, kind of look at a more responsive as well as risk-based regulation, right? So recognizing that the technology will change, but kind of having this pyramid of support and sanctions in place. That, okay, so these are the steps to compliance, and to what degree of violation do then sanctions come in? To what degree of risk and violations do sanctions come in? So I think that is something we have explored in one of our papers as a possible blueprint of AI regulation in India going forward. And I think that is something we can offer as a potential way to think about as we grapple with it, because we are on a fast lane to innovation, and which is great because that gives us the learning in terms of what the technology can or cannot do. But at the same time, kind of having the regulatory, not just the regulatory expertise, but also the technical expertise within the regulatory domain to kind of anticipate the risks and also kind of specify a layered or a pyramid structure for sanctions, so that we don't stifle innovation, but kind of lay out what is acceptable and what is not. So perhaps this is still something that we are in the process of deliberating, and like I mentioned, the institutional building lessons, because particularly when Spain established the AI regulator, there were also discussions about how it would work with the Data Protection Authority in many ways and not kind of cannibalize that authority, but also work in synergy. So I think those are lessons perhaps that we need to kind of look at ourselves, but also kind of be reflective of our reality and look at how we kind of support the innovation ecosystem in a phased manner.
Okay, thank you. So I'm sorry we are completely out of time. So I would have loved to take some questions from the audience, but the panelists are here, so you can definitely chit chat with them during the lunch time. So please raise your hands to give big applause to the panel, and thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
So it was an honor and a pleasure to be here in Mumbai with all of you, especially to close the fourth Spain-India Forum. Of course, I'm well aware that I'm the only thing standing between you and lunch, so I won't even dare summarizing what has been said in the course of the morning. So let me just take a few seconds to acknowledge the work that the ORF and the Spain Council Foundation and their teams have done. My deepest gratitude to the ORF, who in a very short time has been able to gather the best Indian panelists and the best public participants. Thank you to all of you. Considering the dates and the festivities, it is an impressive achievement. Finally, I would like to underline the importance of the Spain-India Council Foundation. It ensures not only the continuity of the bilateral relationship, but the identification of new opportunities that allow it to grow and deepen. So let's continue working together. Happy Diwali, Namaste, and looking forward to hosting all of you in Spain soon.